Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy my stories, I'd really appreciate your support with a like. It helps me a lot. I'd love to hear what you think, so leave a comment and tell me if you enjoyed today's story. And if you want, feel free to share your own love stories. I'd be so excited to read them. Florence breathed with movement. The train station was alive, filled with hurried footsteps, the rolling wheels of suitcases, voices echoing beneath the vast iron arches. Tourists rushed from sign to sign, searching for the right platform. Locals moved swiftly, like dancers who already knew every corner, every shortcut. And in the middle of all that noise sat her, Elena, a young woman with quiet eyes, holding a sketchbook close to her chest as if it were a secret. She never hurried. She never needed to. The world around her could race and stumble and collide, but Elena always carried a slower rhythm, her own rhythm. She found an empty bench by platform 4, sat down, and opened her sketchbook. The pages welcomed her touch. Soon, the lines began to flow, the tall arches of the station roof, curving above like the ribs of a cathedral, the pigeons strutting along the tracks, restless but patient, the suitcases rolling past, each one carrying a hidden story. Her hand moved quickly, yet gently. It was as if the world poured itself onto her page through the tip of her pencil. So focused was she, so lost in her drawing, that she did not notice when someone else appeared. At the other end of the bench, a young man sat down. Adrian. He carried a camera not like a tool, but like an extension of his body. With practiced ease, he lifted it toward the light streaming through the glass roof, trying to catch the exact moment when sunlight kissed the stone floor. His eyes narrowed, studying, searching, until they drifted sideways. And then he saw it. Her sketchbook. The drawing caught him instantly, not only for its detail, but for the way it seemed to see, with tenderness, with patience. It was as though she had found beauty in the very same chaos he had been trying so hard to capture. The words escaped before he could stop them. That's beautiful. Elena's head lifted, surprised. For a heartbeat, she considered closing the sketchbook, hiding it from the stranger's gaze. But instead, she allowed herself a small, soft smile. "Thank you," she said. "I draw what I see." Adrian's lips curved, almost involuntarily, into a grin. "Then you must see the world more gently than most." A sharp whistle cut through the air. The train was leaving. People rushed around them, boarding, shouting, waving goodbye. The whole station moved with urgency. But not them. For the first time in both of their journeys, sitting together on that wooden bench mattered more than catching any train. And there, amid the restless noise of Florence, something quietly began. The days that followed felt less like time, and more like a dream. Florence transformed around them. The city, already ancient and full of stories, became something new, a backdrop for something delicate, something alive. Elena spent her mornings in quiet courtyards, sketching shadows across old stone walls, fountains hidden behind ivy, children chasing each other through narrow streets. Her drawings were soft, almost tender, lines filled with warmth. Adrian, meanwhile, wandered with his camera. He captured markets alive with color, ripe oranges stacked high, hands exchanging coins, vendors shouting greetings in voices that carried across the piazza. He photographed strangers and streets, but no matter where he turned, his lens always drifted back to her, to Elena, as if she were the only image worth keeping. They spoke often, though not always of grand things. Sometimes about their pasts, sometimes about nothing at all. But even in the silence, something grew between them. A comfort, a stillness, like the pause in a piece of music that makes the next note even sweeter. One evening, sitting in a quiet cafe as twilight painted the city in gold, Adrian confessed what he rarely admitted. "I never stay anywhere for long. he said, turning his cup in his hands. Every city is temporary. I tell myself it's because I'm chasing light, chasing stories. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just running. Elena lowered her eyes to the sketch she'd been working on. A soft portrait of a street musician outside the cafe. I know something about running, she murmured. But my escape is different. I hide in lines and shapes. I tell myself it's practice, but sometimes I fear it's just fear. What if I'm always a student? What if I never arrive? Their eyes met then, over the small table. Neither offered solutions. Neither had answers. But in that moment, the weight of their fears softened. They were no longer burdens carried alone. And slowly, Florence became their shared canvas. Days melted into nights. Nights melted into mornings. And with each passing hour, the city unfolded secret corners just for them. Hidden gardens at the end of crooked alleys, little trattorias where the pasta was imperfect, but the laughter was real, riverbanks where the world seemed to hush so they could simply be. It was as though Florence itself conspired to weave their lives together. One evening, the city glowed with the light of sunset. Florence was a painting in motion, golden bridges, water catching fire beneath the last rays of the sun, voices drifting across the Arno. Elena and Adrian walked together along the Ponte Vecchio. The air smelled faintly of leather from the tiny shops, of roasted chestnuts from a vendor nearby. Musicians played softly at the far end of the bridge, their notes carried by the breeze. It should have been perfect. It almost was. But then Adrian's phone rang. He stopped, stepping aside, his voice low as he answered. Elena slowed her steps, pretending not to listen, though fragments still reached her. Words like gallery, Paris opportunity, words that seemed heavy, urgent, bigger than this bridge, bigger than this night. When he finally slipped the phone back into his pocket, she was waiting, silent, watching. So she said quietly, "You're leaving." Adrian hesitated. His eyes lingered on the river, as though the water might carry away the choice. I had planned to. A gallery invited me to show my work. Paris was always the dream. He paused, his voice unsteady. But now, I don't know. The air between them shifted. The laughter of the crowd, the music, the colors of the sunset, all of it dimmed beneath the weight of those words. Elena smiled, though her chest tightened. "You should go," she said softly. "Paris is waiting for you." His reply came barely above a whisper. "And what if I don't want Paris anymore?" She turned away then, toward the river, where the water shimmered with gold and shadow. Her silence was not rejection, but it was not a promise either. And for the first time since they met, the night did not feel certain. They stood together, side by side, yet the space between them felt vast. The Arno rushed below, carrying secrets neither dared to say aloud. The next morning, the station was alive again with its endless rhythm. Trains came and went, voices rose and fell, wheels rattled against the tracks. Adrian stood among the crowd, a suitcase at his side, a ticket to Paris folded neatly in his hand. He stared at it for a long time. Paris, the city he had dreamed of, the city that promised recognition, the city that could turn his restless journey into something permanent. And yet, when the announcement came, when the train screeched into the platform, when people pressed forward in a tide of movement, he did not move. His feet were rooted. His hand would not release the ticket. Something inside him whispered louder than the engines, louder than the voices. Not yet. Not now. Moments later, the train pulled away without him. The ticket remained untouched in his pocket. Instead, Adrian turned back toward the city. Toward her. He found Elena exactly as he imagined she would be, sitting with her sketchbook in hand, sunlight spilling across her shoulders like a blessing. She looked up, startled, as he approached. I thought you'd be on your way to Paris by now, she said. Adrian smiled faintly, but his eyes were steady. I thought so too, but Florence still has more to show me. They spent the day wandering, not as tourists, but as if they belonged to the city. Together they entered the Uffizi Gallery, walking slowly through its endless corridors. Paintings towered above them, each frame heavy with centuries of brilliance. Elena spoke with quiet passion, about brushstrokes, about light cotton oils, about the way a painter's heart could be felt in every shade. Adrian listened, not to the paintings, to her. Her voice became the art, each word more meaningful than any masterpiece on the walls. Later, they walked through narrow streets where laundry hung between balconies like banners of ordinary life. Children laughed as they played with wooden toys. From an open window, someone's violin poured into the evening air. Adrian raised his camera, then lowered it again. Sometimes, he said softly, the best moments don't need to be captured. They just need to be lived. Elena turned toward him, her eyes glimmering. The corner of her mouth lifted in a knowing smile. You're learning. And with each passing day, Florence became less a city on a map and more a secret world built just for them. Weeks passed, and Florence felt like a world that belonged only to them. They shared quiet breakfasts in tiny cafes, where the aroma of fresh bread and espresso mingled with soft morning sunlight. They laughed over wrong turns that led to hidden gardens, discovering fountains and ivy-covered walls that no guidebook would ever mention. At night, they would sit by the Arno, letting the city's hum fade into a gentle background as stars mirrored themselves on the water. Yet beneath the warmth, a quiet shadow lingered. Adrian's phone buzzed more frequently now. Messages from galleries in Paris, London, New York. Doors opening to the very life he had chased for years. Each alert brought excitement, opportunity, and a gnawing sense of distance. Every glance at Elena reminded him that another life, another path, was waiting for him just beyond the horizon. One starry evening, they walked in silence along the riverbank. Lanterns shimmered on the water, casting soft gold reflections that danced in rhythm with their footsteps. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice trembling only slightly. Adrian, what are you looking for? Truly. He stopped, turning to face her. The words were heavy, as if they carried the weight of every city he had ever wandered, every street he had ever photographed. I thought I was looking for beauty, he said slowly, in strangers, in cities, in shadows and light. But now, maybe I was looking for someone to share it with. And maybe I found her. Elena's breath caught. The river whispered beside them. The world hushed, listening. But she only shook her head, gentle yet firm. Be careful with words like that, she said softly. They can change everything. Adrian stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Maybe that's what I want, he said. For a time, everything felt endless. Days flowed into nights, nights into mornings filled with laughter and warmth. But life, as it always does, began to test what seemed unbreakable. Another call came from Paris, urgent and insistent. A gallery wanted him, not just his photographs, but him. A once-in-a-lifetime opening, a chance most artists only dream of. Elena listened as he explained, excitement and conflict twining in his voice. She smiled softly, but her chest tightened. You should go, she repeated, the words sharper this time, cutting deeper than before. Adrian's brow furrowed. And leave you? You wouldn't be leaving me, she said quietly. You'd be following your path. Isn't that what you've always done? And so the silence returned, louder than any argument. Over the next days, their walks grew shorter, their laughter quieter. Florence, once alive with their shared joy, now echoed with the distance creeping between them. Elena buried herself in her sketches, her lines pressing harder against the paper. Adrian wandered with his camera, yet his photographs seemed empty, lacking the warmth she brought into every frame of his life. The city itself, which had been their sanctuary, began to feel restless. Rain began to fall one evening, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the cobblestones and rooftops. Florence blurred into a swirl of water and light, reflections dancing across the wet streets. Elena and Adrian walked side by side, their umbrellas forgotten, letting the rain soak through their coats and hair. Words had been unsaid for days, growing heavier with each passing hour. Finally, the tension broke. "You're afraid of happiness," Adrian said, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the rain. "You push me toward Paris because you think I'll go anyway. You don't believe someone could choose you." Elena's eyes burned with a mix of anger and sadness, her pencil-sketched dreams pressing into her mind. "And you're afraid of staying," she shot back. "You think love will tie you down, trap you, make you less. Maybe that's because you've never trusted anyone enough to stay." The rain poured harder, mingling with the tears neither of them wanted to admit. The city lights blurred, the Arno rippled, and the world seemed to lean in, listening to their confrontation. Neither moved. Neither spoke again. They walked in opposite directions, letting the sound of water swallow their footsteps. For the first time since they met, they ended the night apart. Days passed in silence. The city that had once held them together now felt like a mirror of their distance. Elena sketched alone, her pencil tracing lines that now carried shadows of longing. Adrian wandered, capturing images that lacked life, that did not sing with the warmth of her presence. One evening, as dusk settled over the Arno, Elena brought her sketchbook to the river. Lanterns flickered in the water, the current restless beneath the bridges. She sat on the cold stone steps, hugging her knees, staring at a blank page. Her hand moved almost unconsciously, and soon a familiar face emerged on the paper, Adrian's. The curve of his smile, the light in his eyes, the way he had looked at her the first day on the bench. Tears blurred the lines. She closed the book and pressed it to her chest, holding him close in silence. A familiar voice broke the quiet. "I was hoping you'd be here." Elena turned. Adrian stood a few steps away, damp from the rain, camera hanging forgotten at his side. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he moved closer and sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "I almost left," he admitted. "Ticket in my hand, suitcase ready. But when I reached the station, I couldn't get on the train. I realized Paris can wait. What I want, what I need can't." Her breath trembled. "And what is it you want?" His eyes found hers, steady, quiet, certain. "You." Elena's tears softened, relief mingling with joy. She placed her sketchbook in his lap, opening to the page she had just drawn. His face looked back at him from the pencil strokes. "Even when I tried not to," she whispered, "I couldn't stop drawing you." Adrian's hand covered hers, warm and steady. No walls, no distance, no shadows of doubt. The river flowed beside them, silent witness to their reunion. Slowly, they leaned together. The world quieted, and at last, their lips met, gentle, certain, inevitable. Weeks turned into months, and Adrian and Elena began traveling together. Their first stop was Venice, a city that seemed to float between water and sky. Gondolas glided silently along narrow canals, their ripples catching the morning light like molten gold. Elena sketched them with delicate strokes, capturing the gentle sway, the shimmer of water against ancient stone. Adrian photographed everything, the crowds, the masked faces, the tiny bridges arching over quiet canals. But his favorite images were always of her, her fingers tracing a pencil line, the soft focus in her eyes as she discovered a new perspective, the subtle smile when inspiration struck. They shared small, perfect joys, breakfasts in cafes by the Grand Canal, where the aroma of coffee and baked pastries mingled with the crisp morning air. Quiet walks along deserted streets at dawn, listening to the bells of churches echo across the water. Every day strengthened the bond they had begun in Florence. Every night, they shared dreams, fears, and laughter, discovering how inseparably their lives had intertwined. From Venice, they traveled to London. Adrian's exhibition opened to acclaim, the city buzzing with critics and admirers. He celebrated success, yet it felt incomplete until he saw Elena in the crowd, her sketchbook clutched to her chest, eyes bright with pride, a smile that lit up everything around her. That night, walking along the Thames under the glow of street lamps and the soft mist of the river, they spoke of the future, not careers, not cities, not fame. They spoke of a life together. A life filled with travel, yes, but also with stability, love, and shared creation. The storm of doubt and distance had passed, leaving them stronger, more certain, and closer than ever. Years later, they returned to Florence. The city had not changed much. The same cobblestones, the same bridges, the same flowing Arno. But everything felt different. Their first steps together had left invisible marks on the streets. Elena carried her sketchbook, now filled with entire chapters of their life together. Adrian held his camera, though he no longer photographed strangers so often. His favorite subject had become clear: her, always her. They stopped at the bench in the train station where they had first met. Almost empty, quiet, timeless. The city moved around them, but here, it seemed the world slowed again. "I still can't believe this all started here," Elena whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. Adrian brushed a strand of hair from her face, smiling. "I think I always knew it would, but I didn't know it would be this good." For a moment, neither spoke. Then, with a quiet laugh, Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "Open it," he said. Inside was a photograph. Not of Florence, not of Venice or London. Instead, it captured a small, ordinary moment. Their shadows, side by side, stretched long across the stone of Piazzale Michelangelo, hands intertwined, sunlight catching them in gold. Elena smiled through tears. "It's perfect," she whispered. Adrian leaned closer. "Life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. But with you, it feels like it could be." And there, in the heart of the city that had witnessed their beginning, they laughed, held each other, and stepped forward together into the rest of their lives. The world moved around them. The river shimmered, and Florence, silent witness to countless stories, held theirs. Their love had wandered, stumbled, and been tested, but in the end, it had found home. The days after their return to Florence settled into a gentle rhythm. Adrian and Elena spent their mornings wandering familiar streets, coffee cups in hand, letting the city's familiar sights and sounds become part of their quiet, shared world. Each alley and piazza carried memories now, small, hidden threads that tied them to every step they had taken together. Elena's sketchbook grew thicker with every passing day. She drew the soft curve of the Arno at sunrise, the way lanterns shimmered on rain-soaked cobblestones, and the fleeting expressions of people passing through the city. But most often, her pencil traced Adrian, the way he tilted his head while studying the light, the quiet smile that appeared when he noticed something beautiful, the way his hands moved even when he wasn't holding a camera. Adrian, for his part, had begun to slow his pace. His travels had once been endless, a constant chase for exhibitions and recognition, but now he found fulfillment in the ordinary, intimate moments with Elena. He photographed their life together, not for fame or gallery walls, but to capture the quiet poetry of shared mornings, the laughter echoing through small cafes, the way the sunset turned the rooftops golden. One evening, as autumn settled over Florence and the air grew crisp with approaching winter, They found themselves back along the Ponte Vecchio. The river reflected the soft orange glow of the sunset. Lanterns flickered along the streets, and the faint sound of music floated from a nearby square. Elena paused, leaning against Adrian's shoulder. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. Adrian took her hand in his. "I used to think life was about chasing places and opportunities," he said slowly. "But now, it's about the people we share it with. And for me, that's you." A quiet smile spread across Elena's face. "Then I suppose the rest will take care of itself," she said. They walked on in silence, letting the city speak in its own language. The rustle of leaves, the murmur of the river, the distant tolling of a bell. They had learned that love didn't need perfection, and life didn't need certainty. What mattered was presence, connection, and the courage to choose each other every day. In the weeks that followed, they began to plan small adventures again, not exhibitions, not distant cities, but journeys that allowed them to discover the world together. They visited the Tuscan countryside, sketched sunlit vineyards, photographed quiet villages where time seemed to linger. Each new place became a new page in their shared story, yet always, Florence remained the heart of it all, the city where they had met, been tested, and ultimately found home. And as the years passed, their life together grew richer in small, unremarkable ways. Sunday mornings spent reading on the balcony, evenings preparing dinner with laughter spilling through the kitchen, letters sent to friends from faraway towns, and quiet conversations by the river under a sky painted with stars. Adrian no longer photographed strangers as he once had. His lens found its focus only on her, Elena, the woman who had shown him what it meant to slow down, to see, to stay. And Elena, for her part, drew not only the world but the love they had nurtured, capturing in pencil and paper the moments that made every ordinary day extraordinary. In Florence, amid the bustle and the calm, amid the rivers and bridges and timeless streets, their story continued, steady, enduring, and unshakable. The city had witnessed countless tales of love, loss, and reunion, but theirs was a quiet triumph, a love that had wandered, stumbled, been tested, and in the end, had found its home. After a few months in Florence, the couple decided to embark on a longer journey together. Their first stop was the Amalfi Coast, a stretch of sun-drenched cliffs and turquoise waters that seemed painted by the gods themselves. They rented a small villa perched above the sea, with terracotta roofs and a terrace overlooking endless waves. Elena spent her mornings on the terrace, sketching the sunlight as it bounced off the cliffs, the delicate patterns of flowers that climbed the walls, and the fishermen mending nets below. Adrian wandered through the narrow, winding streets, capturing the colors and textures of the coastal towns, but again, his favorite subject remained Elena. He photographed the way the breeze caught her hair, the concentration in her eyes as she sketched, and the subtle laughter that danced across her lips when she noticed the world in a way only she could. Evenings were their favorite. They cooked simple meals together, fresh seafood from the market, fragrant herbs, tomatoes that tasted of sunlight, and ate on the terrace as the sun set behind the cliffs. The sky turned molten gold and purple, reflecting in the water, and for hours they would simply sit, hand in hand, watching the waves, sharing stories and dreams, letting the world fade around them. From the Amalfi Coast, they traveled north to the Dolomites, trading the sea for mountains. Snow dusted the peaks, and crisp air filled their lungs as they hiked through trails lined with pine forests. Elena sketched the jagged cliffs and frozen streams, while Adrian captured the play of light on the snow, yet he always circled back to her. The way she moved, the spark in her eyes, the warmth in her smile against the chill of the mountains. One evening, as they sat in a small alpine inn, a storm raged outside, winds howling and snow piling against the windows. They sat close together by the fire, silent for a long time, listening to the storm. It feels like we've seen so much, Elena said softly. But I think the best moments are still ahead. Adrian nodded, taking her hand. I used to chase the world, he said. Now I just want to chase life with you. The storm passed, leaving a fresh blanket of snow, and in that quiet white world, they felt something simple yet profound. The certainty that, together, they could face whatever came next. Next, they ventured to Paris, not for galleries or fame, but for the city itself, to wander streets and gardens and cafes without expectations. They strolled along the Seine, sketched in Montmartre, and watched the Eiffel Tower glow at night. Adrian photographed the city, but not the landmarks. Instead, he focused on the subtle, tender moments between them, a shared umbrella in the rain, a quiet laugh over a cafe table, a hand brushing against another in the soft glow of streetlights. Everywhere they went, they carried Florence with them, the city that had first brought them together, that had tested them, and ultimately, that had shown them what love could be. It became a silent thread through all their travels, a home they carried in their hearts. And with each new place, each new adventure, their bond deepened. Through laughter and wonder, through silence and shared reflection, through the challenges of travel and the quiet joys of ordinary moments. Their love, which had wandered, stumbled, and been tested, grew ever stronger, a journey without end, yet always rooted in the simple truth that they had found each other. After Paris, they returned to Italy briefly before deciding to spend several months in Spain, starting in Barcelona. The city was alive with colors, music, and movement, from the twisting streets of the Gothic Quarter to Gaudi's fantastical architecture. Elena sketched tirelessly, capturing mosaics, arches, and the way sunlight bounced off the colorful tiles in Park Güell. Adrian wandered with his camera, photographing the crowds, the markets, and the play of light in hidden courtyards. But again, his favorite subject remained her. In Barcelona, they discovered a quiet rhythm together, mornings wandering the city, afternoons sharing tapas and fresh juice, evenings listening to street musicians along the beach. They danced sometimes, not perfectly, but fully, letting the music carry them across the sand. For the first time, neither felt the need to rush to the next city or exhibition. They simply existed together, savoring each moment. But life, as always, brought challenges. Opportunities began calling Adrian again. Gallery invitations in New York, Tokyo, and Berlin. Each one reminded him of the career he had built and the life he had once chased alone. He hesitated, torn between ambition and the deepening bond he now shared with Elena. One evening in a quiet Barcelona cafe, he finally spoke. Elena, I've been offered a chance to show my work in New York, he said, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his coffee cup. It's everything I thought I wanted, but now I'm not sure. Elena reached across the table, her hand covering his. You have to go if it's important to you, she said softly, but her eyes betrayed the vulnerability beneath her words. But know this, whatever you choose, we face it together. The decision weighed on them both. Adrian flew to New York for the exhibition, leaving Elena in Spain, yet their connection never faltered. Letters, sketches, and photos traveled between them, a tangible thread keeping their hearts intertwined. Adrian's photographs captured the city's energy, but he often found himself thinking of her sketches, her quiet focus, her smile. And when he returned, it was as if no time had passed. Florence, Venice, London, Barcelona, New York. The cities were only a backdrop. What mattered was the life they were building together. Years passed, and their adventures became more than travel. They began creating together, Elena illustrating small books inspired by their journeys, Adrian publishing photo essays that featured her artwork alongside his photography. Their home filled with sketches, photographs, letters, and memories, a tapestry of a life lived fully and intentionally. Through every challenge, career choices, distance, the unknown, they found stability in each other. The world could spin and shift, cities could rise and fall, opportunities could come and go, but their love remained constant, a quiet force guiding them back to one another. Eventually, they returned to Florence once more. The city, timeless as ever, welcomed them like an old friend. They walked the familiar streets, revisiting their favorite cafes, sketching spots and bridges. They returned to the train station where they had first met, standing once again on the wooden bench as the sun cast long shadows across the stone floor. Elena pressed her head against Adrian's shoulder, smiling. "No matter where we go," she whispered, "Florence will always be home." Adrian kissed the top of her hair. "Home is wherever we are together," he said. "And I can't wait for all the places we've yet to see." The city buzzed around them, the river shimmered, and the world moved on. But Adrian and Elena had found their own unshakable rhythm, a life of shared adventure, quiet mornings, laughter, creativity, and love. Steady, enduring, and infinite. Years passed, and Adrian and Elena's life together became a tapestry of love, creativity, and quiet adventures. They settled into a rhythm that balanced travel and home, exploration and intimacy. Florence remained their anchor, the city that had witnessed their first meeting, their trials, and their triumphs, but the world beyond it had become their canvas. They began to mentor young artists, students who reminded them of their own earlier uncertainties, those fragile, restless hearts seeking guidance. Elena taught sketching and composition in small workshops, her gentle approach helping students see the world not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. Adrian guided photography apprentices, encouraging them to chase not just perfection, but the truth in every captured moment. Together, they created a small but vibrant community, fostering creativity and friendship, passing on the lessons they had learned through years of wandering and loving. Yet, despite the joys and successes, they never lost the quiet intimacy that had always defined them. Mornings still began with coffee on the balcony, sunlight spilling over the Arno, sketchbooks and cameras side by side. Evenings were spent walking Florence's streets, the rhythm of the city mingling with the rhythm of their hearts. One spring afternoon, as flowers bloomed along the riverbanks and the city hummed with life, Adrian surprised Elena with a small, unexpected gift. It was a simple leather-bound sketchbook, its pages blank but inviting. "I thought," he said softly, "that after all these years, we might start a new chapter together. A book of our own stories, sketches, photographs, everything we've lived and all the dreams we have yet to chase." Elena's eyes glistened as she took the book in her hands. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Just like every day with you has been." They filled the book slowly, deliberately, not rushing, savoring each moment. Sketches of Venice's canals, London's streets, Barcelona's sunlit plazas, and countless corners of Florence. Photographs of shared laughter, quiet mornings, and fleeting, perfect instants. Notes and letters tucked between pages, capturing thoughts and memories they never wanted to forget. As the years continued, they traveled less frequently, but their lives remained rich. They celebrated anniversaries on sunlit terraces, hosted friends and fellow artists in their home, and watched Florence change subtly around them, new buildings rising, streets bustling differently, yet always familiar, always welcoming. One golden evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the rooftops in soft light, Adrian and Elena sat on the old wooden bench at the train station where it had all begun. They watched travelers pass, each in their own hurry, each in their own story, while they remained still, timeless in their shared quiet. "I can't believe how far we've come," Elena murmured, leaning against him. Adrian kissed her temple. "Neither can I. But every step, every city, every challenge, it was worth it. Because it led me to you. The river shimmered, the city hummed, and the years unfolded gently around them. They had built a life filled with love, adventure, art, and trust, a life that had weathered distance, ambition, and uncertainty. And as they sat together, hand in hand, they knew that no matter what the future held, they had found the one thing that truly mattered: each other. Their love had wandered, stumbled, and been tested, but in the end, it had created a home. Not a place, not a city, not a fleeting moment, but a life shared and enduring, a story that would live in their hearts forever. Decades passed, and Adrian and Elena grew older together, their hair touched with silver, their faces lined with the subtle traces of laughter, joy, and time well spent. Florence remained their home, a city both constant and ever-changing, as if it too had grown with them. They continued their routines, though slower now. Morning coffee on the balcony overlooking the Arno, long walks through familiar streets, quiet evenings filled with sketching and photography, or simply sitting together, hands intertwined, watching the world move around them. Their home was a living gallery of a lifetime. Sketches, photographs, letters, and souvenirs from every city, every adventure, every shared moment. Grandchildren began to visit, drawn by tales of faraway cities and the love story that had spanned continents. Elena taught them to see beauty in the small things, the quiet gestures, the curves of shadow and light. Adrian encouraged them to look closer, to capture the world as it truly was, but also as it could be seen through the lens of love and imagination. One evening, as the sun set behind the Tuscan hills, painting Florence in gold and rose, Adrian and Elena walked to the old wooden bench in the train station. The station had grown quieter, less crowded than in their youth. Yet somehow the energy remained, the hum of journeys beginning and ending, the echoes of lives intertwining. They sat together, hands folded, watching the golden light spill across the stone floor. "I've lived so many lives," Adrian said softly, his voice carrying the calm certainty of years. "And every one of them led me to you." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "And every day with you has been a gift," she whispered. "I can't imagine it any other way." They remained there long after the trains had passed, long after the sun had dipped behind the horizon. Time seemed to stretch, and yet, in that stillness, everything they had lived, every adventure, every trial, every moment of doubt and joy, felt complete. When at last they stood, hand in hand, to leave the station, it was with the quiet knowledge that their story had reached its perfect fullness. It was not in grandeur or fame, not in accolades or recognition, but in the everyday enduring presence of one another. Their love had wandered, stumbled, and been tested, but in the end, it had truly found home. And as they walked through the streets of Florence, their shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, intertwined, golden in the fading light, a final echo of the first photograph that had captured a love that lasted a lifetime. The city carried on around them, alive and eternal, but Adrian and Elena had found something more enduring: each other, and a life that would forever be theirs. The story ends with the quiet triumph of a love that endured time, distance, and uncertainty, a full circle from the train station where it all began.